Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to 6 Things That We Learned from Bradford City 1 at Crewe Alexandra 0. If you do go on to enjoy today's video, please make sure to drop a like on there for me. If you could try and hit 80 likes on today's video, that'd be massively appreciated. Subscribe if you're new as well. We're on the road to 8,000 subscribers, so please make sure you are subscribed if you haven't already with that post notification bell on. It's free to do so and it does massively help out. Get a comment as well down in the comment section down below. Let me know your thoughts on yesterday's win. Now, I am joined by a guest today, but unfortunately, I say unfortunately, probably fortunately, Frank wasn't available. He's on holiday again. So we've probably upgraded and we've got Korban in today to be talking about the 6 different subjects in today's episode. Now, obviously, last week was a very negative one. There was a lot of things said that I would probably say I still stand by, to be honest with you. You know, even though it was a bit of a, I wouldn't even call it an overreaction. I think it was a justified reaction, to be honest with you. I still stand by 99.9% of things that I said last week. So today's episode should hopefully be a bit more positive, a bit more upbeat and all that sort of stuff. And we'll start out then with Harry Lewis, who I thought was absolutely back to his best yesterday. You know, he's struggled so far this season, in my opinion. In every league game that we've played so far, he'd been at fault for at least one of the goals that we'd conceded. And it was great to see him yesterday making, I would say, a good 2, 3, 4 saves, which were really, really good. Now, there was nothing that was absolutely incredible, like some of the saves that he made last season, nothing that made us think he were like prime Manuel Neuer, but he was back to making some really, really good saves, which a goalkeeper like Richard O'Donnell or a Sam Hornby of the last couple of seasons wouldn't have made. I thought his distribution looked much improved as well. And there was something that came out in the news during the week as well about how he'd had some sort of fine and 6 points on his license. So that might have been playing on his mind, because I think I read somewhere that he could have potentially faced up to 6 months in prison for this alleged crime that he'd committed. But now that that's been settled with, I think that could have potentially been on his mind, because that is obviously something to seriously be worried about. And, you know, it's nice to see that that's, you know, gone and it's done with now. And I thought we saw him really back to his best yesterday. I've given him a lot of stick so far this season, but I thought he was absolutely brilliant yesterday. So he absolutely has to get a green box for me.
Yeah, I definitely agree. One thing I would say is I saw somewhere in, I think it was TNA, about how he struggled with a playoff semi-final defeat against Carlisle. I've got a bit ahead of myself there. And it sort of throws a question of, would you rather have a player who's that emotional and that attached to a club, or would you rather have a player who don't get bothered by those sort of performances and throws it under a carpet and performs week in, week out, but don't have that same emotion to the club? Now, I think I'd probably rather have a Harry Lewis, because you don't have a Harry Lewis at every club. I mean, I think last season, when you look at a few of the top division games, Premier League, Leeds and Arsenal, I remember rightly, a lot of their players ignored the fans after the game, and you don't really get that in the lower levels, and definitely with Harry Lewis. So I think I'd definitely rather have a Harry Lewis. But one thing I would possibly be open to having is a number 2, just to push him and keep him at it throughout the season, because there might be a bit of complacency creeping in throughout the season.
Yeah, I think there was a couple games last season where he didn't perform really well, but I think because he set his own standards so high, and we know how good Harry Lewis can be, his like low standards is still higher than, like, say, Richard O'Donnell's really high standards, for example. So I think he's almost like shot himself in the foot by being so good, but he did make some really big errors at the start of the season. It's just nice to see him. Looks like he's got his confidence back, and especially when we went to the back 4, it just seemed like we were so much more organised, because the first half, that first 40 minutes was so poor, so boring. But in the second half, it was like something changed at halftime, and it's such a shame we can't play like that for the whole game. And I think we looked much better in a back 4. I thought the defence looked much more solid. I thought overall Harry Lewis did have a really, really good game, in my opinion.
I think I heard on a season with Bradford City podcast, you were speaking on there and talking about how you have to adjust to different formations and having 3 centre backs. And we definitely looked a lot more comfortable with that. And you could tell that, especially with the back 4, because Halliday came in, Stubbs, Platt and Lewis, they all know each other from last season. So you could definitely see that they're a bit more composed around each other.
Moving on then to our second box, and it's a yellow box for Mark Hughes. Now, last week, after such a terrible performance, we were promised a reaction, and that first 40 minutes was far from that. Now, we've got the win at the end of the day. We've won the football match, so I can't give a manager a red when we've won. But his performances like that first 40 minutes, even for the majority of the first half, to be fair, despite the goal, that Crewe dominated that first half. They had a lot of possession, and I think, again, a better team would have taken them chances. You look at our start to the season, season. And on paper, Stockport was the only real high game. We've only managed to pick up 7 points, I think. So we've got a pretty tough September coming up. And you look at months coming up like Tranmere starting out in October. And then you've got Swindon, Wimbledon, Wrexham, MK Dons. And we end it with Sutton. October looks like a very tough month. December looks like a very, very tough month as well. And I think when you get into them nitty gritty sort of games, you can't be taking 40, 45 minutes to grow into a game. It wasn't a reaction. We should have gone at Crewe from the off and press them. And we're happy to sit in like a low block, quite defensive. And I know that's sometimes what the three at the back can bring when your wing backs drop into more fullbacks, but we should, in my opinion, just scrap off this 3-5-2 because Mike Hughes doesn't play it the right way. He doesn't play it attacking enough. And if you're going to be defensive, you need players to be able to counter. And I don't really think you can counter attack with someone like an Andy Cook up front. While he's good for a certain outlet to try and hold the ball up, he's not really done that too much this season. I thought, again, Mike Hughes didn't exactly get his tactics spot on. When we were forced to change to go to the back four, we certainly did look a lot better. We looked a lot more composed and we look more structured. And I know we've got injuries at this moment in time, but I think this is a big week for us. We have to get at least 3, maybe 4 new signings in. I think we still need a couple of wingers. We could do with another striker as well because we've got a lot of injuries in the top end of the pitch. I mean, that football that we're playing this season, that is where you are going to get the most injuries because they're the sort of players who do the most running. So I think we need at least 3 more signings for me. Like I say, Mike Hughes got his tactics wrong for the first half. Second half was much better, especially when we went to the back four, but I can't give him a red because obviously we won the game. I can't give him a green though because it wasn't exactly an impressive performance for 90 minutes like what we pretty much promised last week after such a poor result against Morecambe.
Yeah, exactly. It would have been a red if we lost though, because that was it. That first half, I mean, I think it was one of the worst, if not the worst, I've seen watching Bradford City. And I've had to witness Derek Adams, David Hopkin, and all those. And I would have rather have watched paint dry. You know, it was a disgrace because against Crewe, when you're playing against a team like them, no disrespect to them, they are going to be down near the bottom, and their expectations are very low. They're not exactly the most possession-based side in the league either. So, and at home. Now, if you're away, you can sort of accept that performance. But when you're at home against a team who aren't going to be playing like they normally do, against the Mansfield, you can sort of accept it a bit more away, you know, next week, and they're a team who have a lot of quality in their side. You are going to have to try and limit their chances as well as you can. But the way we did it's unacceptable for a home game, and I think we got lucky with a goal as well. Because I mean, Mark Hughes got lucky with a goal because when I was looking at the body language on the pitch, everyone looked confused. Everyone looked like they were lacking a bit of leadership. No one pulled anyone together. There were arguments going on. I remember Cook having a few shouts at Kelly, and you know, Stubbs. There were just nothing like Morecambe. But what I saw was that the team looked like they pulled each other together around 30th, 35th minute. And it looked like they were responsible for the upturn in the performance by creating chances and just pushing up the pitch and, you know, taking the pressure off themselves. And then the second half, obviously, we got the goal later on, which is best time to score. And I think that momentum pushed us through to a second half. And I don't think Hughes actually had a lot of say in the performance. And for me, it just continues how lucky he is as a manager. And for me, the 3-5-2 goes or Mark Hughes goes, and that's not my opinion. That's just a fact, in my opinion, because if you see managers, they persist with a play or they persist with a tactic or formation, and that ends them. And I think that would be the 3-5-2 for Hughes because it's totally ineffective, and you can tell the players they're not content playing that style either.
Yeah, I think that is a big problem for Mike Hughes. He seems very, very stubborn. Last season, he was very stubborn to change from the 4-2-3-1, but now I'd give quite a lot to have the 4-2-3-1 back because we look so disorganized, a real lack of leadership out on the pitch. And I don't really know what it was, but they seem like Crewe had an extra man yesterday. I don't know how that can be possible, especially when you're defending 5 defenders there. They just seem to have major overloads in the wide areas, and I don't know if we'd slightly got our press wrong or I don't really know what had gone wrong, but it seemed like constantly Crewe would have the extra man, and it really was costing us a lot of yards up the pitch. Granted, they didn't really have too many clear-cut chances, but I think like next Saturday when we play against a team like Mansfield, they're absolutely flying. I think they've won all of their home games so far. You think people like Will Swan, Lucas Akins, Davies Keeler-Dunn, for example, are going to miss them type of chances? I think they only need half a sniff, really, especially Keeler-Dunn. He's been on fire so far this season, so we've got to be much more assured defensively, and we can't just be allowing ourselves to get overrun in the midfield. And that's how it looked like yesterday. It looked like we were getting overrun in the midfield, and both teams had three midfielders in there, so I don't really understand how we managed to do that. It was wing back versus wing back. It was three midfielders against three midfielders, and we actually had an extra centre back because they only had two strikers. So I don't really understand why we struggled so much defensively in that first half. We were giving up a lot of ground and a lot of possession, and you just can't do that at home because it killed the atmosphere. First 5 minutes, we were going on the front foot, we were attacking, and the fans were really getting behind it. And then all it takes is 10 minutes of us sitting back, and suddenly it feels like a pre-season game because the atmosphere goes completely flat because the fans have nothing to get behind. And I think Hughes needs to realise that the fans just want to see attacking football. And I know we're not going to see it for 90 minutes, but then when he comes out in his, post-match press conference and said 1-0 flat as Crewe, maybe in the second half we had a couple of half decent chances, but we didn't really create nothing clear cut in that second half. And I just think he's slightly shooting himself in the foot by saying we're going to get a reaction and then producing that for the first half. It just simply isn't good enough, and the fans just want to be off the edge of their seats, and it doesn't really feel like at the moment where the manager's allowing them to do that. It feels like we're playing with the handbrake on, and I know I've seen that quote and that phrase be used quite a lot on social media because it doesn't really seem like the shackles are ever going to come off, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. The problem with Hughes is he's fallen into Derek Adams territory with his post-match and pre-match comments, how relaxed he is, the style of play. And the funny thing is, we all know what we were chanting last week to Derek Adams as well, so that hasn't aged well. One thing I would add on Mark Hughes is, throughout his career in the Premier League, his expectations has always been the bare minimum of keeping us up, and then anything more than that, like top half or Europe, is a big bonus. Whereas at Bradford City, the expectation is to get out this division, and the minimum is playoffs, and he always produces the minimum, and that's what we did with the playoffs last season. And the problem is this season you expect it to progress, and that expectation is massively on Hughes now to try and get us into a top three, because that's what he's got to deliver if we're going to progress this season.
Moving on then to our third box, we are going to be discussing Brad Halliday, and I've gone with a green box. Came on off the bench for the injured Daniel Oyegoke, and it forced us really at that point to change to the back four because Kelly also came off with, I think Mike Hughes said, muscle spasm, so it could have been cramp, but it's not great to see us picking up two injuries there, and Oyegoke obviously came off with a groin injury, but I thought Halliday again really did stand out, and it seems to be everyone can see that Halliday is better than Oyegoke except Mark Hughes, and it's so frustrating because Oyegoke just doesn't really offer a lot. Yesterday, I don't actually think Oyegoke was too bad, but Brad Halliday showed much more in his 20-minute cameo than Oyegoke has done for the majority of the season. He's much better than him going forward, and to say Oyegoke is a wing back and Halliday is a traditional full back, Halliday is just so much better, and defensively he's astronomically clear of him. He's 100 times the player Oyegoke is. Halliday's so switched on defensively, and I just think Halliday had a really, really good game. He had a good impact off the bench, was solid defensively, put some good crosses into the box as well. And there was a reason why he was one of our top assisters last season, Brad Halliday, because he put some really good crosses into the box. And I think when him and Cook are linking up once again, Cook's going to get a lot more goals scored because Halliday put some really good crosses in, where Oyegoke just never really seemed to do that. It's constant fake cross and then passing it backwards. And don't get me wrong, it worked for our goal. McDonald put a really, really good cross in, but that's going to become predictable at some point. And Halliday just likes to swing balls in, and sometimes he does overhit them, but I think he's much more consistent with it than Oyegoke. And like I say, he's much better than him defensively. So Brad Halliday, for me, absolutely has to get a green box.
Yeah, it was just an area we didn't need to change last season. He was Mr. Consistent. Like I say, we're probably, for me, we're the third best player in the team, because you can't buy consistent players. Whilst Banks and Wright were probably better on the day throughout a season, you need your Brad Hallidays in your team who are constantly going to give effort. And it's just well-rounded, like you say, compared to Oyegoke. Don't know what he offers. And he has to come back in the team, mainly because of the fault back.
Moving on then from one fullback to the other, Lewis Richards is getting a green box again from me. Really, really impressive performance for that first couple of minutes where he just absolutely skinned. I think it was Ryan Cooney, the Crewe right wing back. He absolutely skinned him, put a great cross, flashed across the face of goal. The keeper could only parry it. I think he's going to be a really, really good player for us going forward. I might be overreacting because we've got our left back now who can actually use his legs, and he's pretty solid defensively. We've not really seen much of a winger try and take him on yet, but he seems to be very, very complete for this level. He's good going forward, can take on a man, good crosses into the box. Defensively, seems pretty solid. He's quite quick. He's physically strong. He's quite tall as well. I just think he's a very well-rounded left back, left wing back, and he could even do a job as a left-sided centre half. I think we've had some poor recruitment over the last 18 months or so, but this one seems like a good signing. Again, we've not seen him play a full 90 minutes yet. For some reason, Liam Rideout keeps coming on off the bench for him. I understood the first game to maybe try and get him up to speed, but yesterday just didn't really make sense to me. And I understand he picked up what was a pretty stupid booking. I thought Drysdale was very harsh with that yellow card. The free kick had just been given and Richards had just had the ball blasted at him. It's pretty soft, but that is probably a standard yellow card these days. And it was quite annoying. So I can understand that might be the reason why, but Richards is miles better than Rideout. I think going forward, whether he's playing a back four or a back three with wing backs, Richards has to be in there because he's just a lot better than Rideout. He's much more complete and he's got a bit of pace about him. And in League Two, your fullbacks can't not have any pace. Rideout doesn't offer anything really. He's not good defensively. He's not good going forward. He's not quick. He's not particularly strong. He's got good experience, but apart from that, he just doesn't really offer enough for me. And we've seen it already countless times this season, him getting skinned. So it's just nice to see Richards putting in some good performances. And I hope it really does continue for him because we need him to be performing there. He seems very consistent. He seems very solid. And he looks good going forward as well. I think he will chip in with a few goal contributions this season. And for me personally, it has to be another green box.
If he keeps progressing the way he's going, it could be one of the signs of the summer, not just for us, but for League Two. Because when you take into account of what we needed, the main reason of it has been taking Liam Rideout out of the team for 70 minutes. But he's progressing well, and like you say, he's well-rounded like Brad Halliday. But the best part about it is he's still relatively young, and he's the type of player that you normally get on loan. And to say that he's ours, and I think is it a 2-year or 3-year deal? It's very exciting what Lewis Richards could do at Bradford City, and we haven't had someone like him since 16-17 James Meredith, because the left back positions has been a massive hole in our team that's always been massively exposed by the opposition. So if we do get Brad Halliday in that position, that's 2 gaps filled, hopefully.
Yeah, I think I've seen a few comments, to be fair, on the video saying that he looks as good as James Meredith. And like you say, I agree with that. He's the type of player that we normally do get in on loan. So I think we paid a little bit of money for him to get him in with 2 years. And again, the option of a further year. It seems just like a really smart piece of business. And I hope these next couple of signings that we are going to make this week, there's been rumours, obviously, John Kaimani Gordon and another midfielder from Leicester as well. So hopefully we get a couple more in through the door. But I think defensively, a back four of Halliday, Platt, Stubbs and Richards is a very, very strong back four at this level. I don't think we really need to add in another centre-half in Kelly. I actually think that would slightly weaken our defence, even though you've got an extra body in there. I think the back four that I've just suggested there is overall a pretty strong one, in my opinion. Moving on then to box number 5. Now, this is the only red box of today's video. It's the injuries / physio / sports science department. We've picked up countless injuries so far this season, and sometimes you can't really do much about them if they're contact injuries like Jamie Walker's. It was a bad tackle on his ankle. I think it's swelled up a little bit, but the amount of muscle injuries we seem to have picked up this season is really concerning. We didn't really have that many last season, but it already seems like this season, I think we've got 7 or 8 potentially out for Tuesday, which is a little bit of a concern. And I know we're playing a little bit more football this season, an extra 10 minutes or so per game, but I don't think that's enough to have all these injury problems. If you think about it, Kelly could potentially be out with, again, more muscle cramps. He's had that a few times this season in his calves, which is not good for a centre-half. Gilead's out with, I think, a thigh problem. Ador's got a groin problem. Oliver's got a groin problem. Obviously, Chapman's hamstring injury from last season. Cook, I think, said, Mike Hughes said that he twisted his back, so he could be out for Tuesday as well. We seem to just have more and more injuries growing. Ash Taylor with his Achilles as well. The list goes on at the moment, and it just seems like we can't really catch a break. And I think that's why we're so desperate for recruits to come in through the door, because we could really do with them at the moment. You know, we're struggling with injuries, and I think that is a little bit of concern. Obviously, we lost, I think it was a head of medicine or something like that in Chris Royston, who I think went to Rotherham. So that seems like it was a pretty big loss for us, because we're picking up so many muscle injuries this season, and it is a very much so a concern. You know, it can't go on like this where we're picking up multiple muscle injuries, and I don't think it helped that Hughes gave them a couple of days off, because when you put in, I'm not going to call it a shift, but when you play a football match against Morecambe and then you don't do anything for 2 or 3 days, you know, you go and see your family, you're not really doing proper recovery, to then come back into training and have to play what was a really hard fought match against Crewe, especially that last 15-20 minutes, and the amount of running that players are having to do. That's not exactly going to be helping that point of view, because for me personally, we're just picking up far too many injuries, and it is certainly increased from last season. Again, I know we've playing a little bit more football this season, but I don't think it's enough for us to be picking up all these injuries that we currently are at this moment in time. And it just has to be a red box for the injuries. And I don't know whether it's down to the sports science or the physio department, but either way, something's got to change, because it can't go on like this season, or we're going to have to start forfeiting games if we're picking up 1, 2, 3 injuries every single match.
I think it were a weird case how last season, for the last few seasons, probably about last 10, we've had miles of injuries and loads of players constantly going. But last season, we barely had any, which were extraordinary, really, with our record. But so with that, I think start season, you always get a few more because of pre-season, and a few of the players haven't played a lot. But like I say, I think what I would have done if I were used with that week off, with a couple of days off, I would have made sure I was monitoring them, and more of a team bonding thing, instead of just letting them all go off and fly off 12 different places. I would have used it as more, I don't know, first thing that comes to mind is Lake District or somewhere, and, you know, get them running and get them mixing with each other, rather than just flying them off to wherever they end up going. And you can monitor them then with the injuries. But I suppose it is concerning, especially with them being muscle injuries. But I'm not too concerned with who they are, especially when you look at it made us change to a thought at the back with Kelly and Oyugoki going and Ash Taylor. I'm quite pleased with that one, to be honest.
I think, you know, obviously the players do need to spend time with their family and that sort of stuff, but that comes from, you know, playing well, and you get rewarded when you play well, and, you know, you get wins and you get days off. That's when it should be. You know what I mean? When you've just been battered 3-0 by Morecambe, and the fans can clearly see that, there was certainly a few players who like they'd given up and not really putting the effort in. I'd have had them in the next day, making up the running that they didn't do the previous day. And I know that obviously every manager's different and all that sort of stuff. Hughes clearly went down the route of giving them a few days off. Did it work? Did we get that reaction in the first half? I don't personally think so. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see what happens on Tuesday. Now, we've got to follow it up with a win against Wrexham, but you know, with a look at the amount of injuries that we've got, we're not going to be risking a number of players for that game. It's certainly cause for concern, because you look at how we could potentially be lining up for that, with between 8 and 10 players being unavailable, because I don't really see a reason why you would then risk a Jamie Walker, a Kieran Kelly and Andy Cook, when they could, especially Andy Cook, could barely move at full time against, obviously, Crewe. You know, that last 10 minutes, he was literally hobbling around the pitch, committing clumsy fouls. I don't know why we didn't just bring him off instead of aggravating it, because it was like playing with 10 men anyway. He couldn't move, and he was just going around committing stupid fouls. So I think certainly the physio sports science department needs to be looked into, because like I say, we can't sustain this level of injury. On to our 6th and final box then of today's video, and it's another green box, this time for Sam Stubbs. I think that's 4 green boxes for either the defenders or the goalkeeper. I thought Sam Stubbs, especially that last 15-20 minutes, was absolutely colossal. First half, again, a few shaky moments, but I think as soon as we went back to that back four, we saw Sam Stubbs from last season. We saw the best out of him. I thought he was absolutely brilliant. Every ball that came into the box, it was either him or Platt got his head on it, and Platt could easily be in here, but I've given Stubbs a bit of stick so far this season. I thought it was only fair to praise him when he played well, especially that last 15-20 minutes. I thought he was absolutely fantastic. He dealt with the dark arts of Nevitt very well. You know, there were a couple of times where Nevitt was trying to wind him up, you know, giving him a few slide digs off the ball. I think even potentially, you know, I had a couple of headlock moments as well. And, you know, you see that happen quite a lot with strikers, but Nevitt seemed to be really trying to get under Sam Stubbs' skin. And I think he's a very, very good leader, is Sam Stubbs, obviously captained the team for the first 65 minutes until Smallwood came onto the pitch. And I thought, again, he did a very good job at that. And overall, I was just very impressed again with Sam Stubbs, who hasn't exactly had a great start to the season. But overall, for me, I thought yesterday he was just absolutely brilliant.
I think I'm on my own with this one, looking all over social media. I give him a 2 out of 5 in match reaction. And I mean, for the whole of the 70 minutes before, around the last 20-minute mark, I thought it was quite shaky and uncomfortable. But like I said, that comes with been playing a back three. But I thought actually out of the 3, 5, 6 centre backs we've brought in this summer, is that he would be the more comfortable in it, because he's a leader, he's a commander, he's pretty decent on the ball normally, and you know, he gets tight to play. So I thought it'd suit him more. And I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, he played in a back three under Exeter, under whatever his bloody name is, Taylor, who's at Rotherham. So I thought he would have been quite comfortable in there, but that's not been the case. And like I said, last 20 minutes, Sim and Platt dealt with most of it coming into the box, and he showed why last season he was one of the best centre backs in the league with that last 5 months or so. But he in that back four, but I just think he was a bit shaky in that first half. And if he can keep progressing and keep going the way he is, I think he'll be back to being Sam Stubbs.
Yeah, I actually don't think the back four, the back three really suits him, because I feel like he's much more used to sometimes having to be dragged out of position, especially because he obviously plays in the middle because he's the slowest out of the three. I don't think it really suits him being in the middle. I think he much prefers the 1v1 battles rather than having to be the defender who's sometimes covering. And I don't think it's just really working, to be honest with you. I think when Platt and Stubbs played last season together, I thought that was our best partnership. I don't think Critchlow was part of our best defensive partnership. Again, obviously Critchlow was a much better ball player and suited the system more, but in terms of actual defenders, I thought that partnership of Platt and Stubbs worked really well last season, and they linked up well with Lewis. And it's no real surprise to me to see that Lewis seemed to improve his performance when he was playing in a system and a back four that he seemed much more comfortable with. He seemed much more familiar with the players, and overall it just seemed to work a lot more with the back four. Now, I'm not saying that we should go and play back four for the rest of eternity, because as soon as you don't have one extra defender in there, then you're a million times better. But we just look more comfortable, and it seemed to suit the players a lot more. When you play that and you have a double pivot potentially of Smallwood and McDonald, it then allows Patterson to be a bit more free and be a bit more creative. And that's where Patterson is best in the final third, as much as he does a lot of running and a lot of defensive work to help out in the midfield at the moment. I think if you play him as a number 10, it just works so much better and you get the best out of Alex Patterson. So for me personally, I just think the back four overall is our best option.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And as I said earlier, you know, but if he sticks with a back three, it will be the end of Mark Hughes. And I think when you look at Stubbs and Platt, the only weakness with them two is that they do lack pace, but you lack pace anyway with the back three that we've got. And it does become more rigid and more solid, because neither of the three suit each other. As a defensive unit, they're all over the place, because they're all too similar. And I think the back four will definitely bring out the best of the four and hopefully get back to being one of the best defences in the league again. And it further emphasises why we didn't need to change to a back three when we're already really solid there anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I've had this discussion a few times with various people. We've changed last season what we didn't really need to change, and we haven't changed what we did need to change. But we will leave it there, though, for today's video. If you have enjoyed, please make sure to drop a like on there for me. If you could try and hit 80 likes, as I said at the start of today's video, that'd be massively appreciated. Subscribe if you're new as well. We're on the road to 8,000 subscribers, so please make sure you are subscribed if you haven't already, with that post notification bell on. It's free to do so, and it does massively help out. Yeah, comment as well down in the comment section down below. Let me know your thoughts on yesterday's win down below, and do you think Korban should continue instead of Frank going forward? Check him out as well. His link is down in the description down below. Thank you all very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you very soon for another one. Peace.